Chucky's a TV ad.
Hey, welcome back to Bestiary Boys, the weekly show where we take a deep dive into monster manuals and, of course, bestiaries. Today we are talking about the giant amoeba. Yes, you heard that correctly. And I'm going to kick it off here. We're going to kind of mix up the format. I think Joey and I are going to swap things back and forth week to week. So, as you guys know, we absolutely love the intro quotes to every single one of these creatures. So it reads, amoebas are perfectly edible as long as you neutralize the corrosive properties of the flesh. Stuff them with meat, root vegetables, or fruit, and you have a delicious, slightly acidic aspect. And this is from Jans Lugeber, Master Chef. So, really weird intro quote. I would not have expected a chef talking about how to prepare one of these things that are gross and slimy.
Right. But now you have a little side quest to go gather some.
Oh yeah, maybe you'll meet Jans and he'll give you some really great information if you bring him back some giant amoeba.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on, what the hell is a giant amoeba? Well, it's I guess most equated to a gelatinous cube in the Dungeons and Dragons world. These things allegedly, it is unknown. The origin of them is unknown, but it was created or conjured by demon cultists in the oldest times. It is not clear why, though. However, the chronicler of this bestiary, who we actually, Joe and I, learned the name of because we didn't read the preface in the beginning, which is another amazing layer. Just to keep it quick, there is a character within the Dragonbane world who is chronicling the entire bestiary, and there's even a dwarven artist who is attributed or credited for doing all of the artwork. And we decided we're going to do kind of at the very end of after we get through all of the creatures, we're going to do go over the preface, talk about the character, documenting it, and then go over every single creature category. But anyway, today's about giant amoebas. So yeah, this thing, it was created by demon cultists, allegedly, but nobody knows why. They think, or this person thinks it is an absolute mistake. And we find out that their entire life revolves around finding and consuming organic matter. And they use their jelly-like form to hide in the pits and holes or crawl through narrow cracks to surprise victims and pull them into its body, where they are, of course, slowly dissolved. It goes over where you are most likely to find these creatures, swamps, deep caves, but they have been sighted elsewhere in ruined complexes, dark forest lakes, and even in city sewers. So my favorite personal setting, and we'll get into it a little bit more when we talk about random encounters at Adventure Seeds, but I like these in a dungeon. I think a sewer is cool. Maybe a swamp. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, especially with Dragonbane giant amoebas in particular, I like that. I mean, they give you a lot more ideas of where to find them. I like the lakes idea. Definitely city sewers. I actually had one in a city sewer. We'll talk about that of how we use them in the game. But yeah, I love these things. These things are cool because I can relate. I also am a huge lump of slime whose life revolves around finding and consuming things. So
aren't we all?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess before we move on to the stat block, let's check out this art. We forgot to talk about the art. So one thing I really love about the artwork in Dragonbane, and I feel like more modern monster manuals and bestiaries are finally doing this, is that it's not just the creature sitting there on some kind of parchment background. We have the actual giant amoeba crawling down the staircase in what looks to be a ruin or a castle hallway or something like that. And there is an elf in the foreground. His or her back is to us and holding a lantern up high, finally spotting this thing. So really cool because it just places you in the world versus being like a encyclopedia where you're just going to have like a single image of this creature without any kind of context. So this image immediately conjures, adventure ideas, which I, of course, appreciate. So I guess moving on, Joey, why don't you tell us how this thing attacks and what its abilities are?
Well, it's got a ferocity of 2, so it's getting 2 initiative cards each round. It is a large creature, which interestingly enough, just to talk about the creature size in this game, I'm assuming it's like the standard for most games like D&D, a large creature takes up 4 squares.
Yeah, I believe so. I think it's about twice the size of a, quote unquote normal size. Yeah, which would be like humanoid.
And the reason why I wanted to bring this up is for a little slight constructive criticism. I know that Free League is redoing like the standees for through that Kickstarter. as one of the unlockable things, but I think it would be good if really maybe in a future print or maybe like a second edition printing of the core rulebooks, maybe they included standee bases that were representative of the size. Because right now, if you buy it, it only just comes with what would be medium-sized creatures.
Good point. I'm guessing
that's just
printing cost, production cost, probably.
Probably. I mean, you can order them online, like the other sizes, especially through Pathfinder Battle Pawns. I'm only bringing that up because if you're a fan of Dragonbane, maybe this is the only game you play or it's the first one, you do have a way to find standee bases that represent the sizes of these creatures. But moving on, it's got a movement of 8, so 4 squares. It was as fast as Donovan could run, because Donovan had a movement of 2 squares. If I dashed, I had 4. So I was as fast as a giant amoeba at my fastest. It has no armor, so whatever you hit it with, it takes it. It's got
we'll get to it.
It's bulky HP.
Yeah, 64.
64, Nintendo 64. But yes, if you do attack this creature with your weapons, be ready to pretty much lose them almost, right? Doesn't it? Yeah. So it's corrosive. Its entire body is slightly corrosive. Anyone who touches the giant amoeba or takes damage from its attacks is exposed to a paralyzing poison with potency 9.
Yeah, this is something we were talking about before we did the recording. How I thought that was weird. I thought it would be more damage based, because we'll find out a little bit later that when you get trapped inside one of these things, you are taking damage. So I'm wondering that if you're in contact with this thing, why would it paralyze you? It seems like it would just create more damage, but I don't know. Maybe it was a balancing thing.
Yeah, I'm guessing maybe it has slight like jellyfish inspiration, because jellyfish paralyze their prey.
There you go.
A man-o'-war, which is a really big jellyfish, basically, it could paralyze a human in water, just about. So I think that might be some inspiration for it. It takes half damage from non-magical weapons and attacks.
There you go.
Which makes sense, because... So yeah, it does have armor.
On that note, real quick, when you're running a game, how do you handle that? How do you handle communicating that to players? Because there was plenty of monsters when I was running the campaign, and I kind of just told you guys, like, it seems like you should have hit it harder, or it should have drawn more blood or whatever. But I'm just curious, from your perspective, when you run games, how do you communicate that so the players get it without explicitly saying it takes half damage?
Yes. So there's a variety of ways. It depends all on what they're attacking with. So if they're attacking with melee weapons, let's say, for instance, they're attacking with a bladed weapon, a sword or something like that. If it's a sword, I might describe it where it's like you see the blade gash across the creature's hide, but only a little blood seeps through the wound.
Yeah, okay. So it's just like a light, it's a lighter outcome of description.
Yeah, I basically describe what they're doing as minor injuries rather than moderate or severe ones. And if it's effective, I describe it as a more severe injury rather than a moderate one. It has immunities. It's completely immune to piercing damage, magical or non-magical. That's neat.
That's crazy, yeah. Because I know in Dragonbane, if you guys didn't know, haven't played Dragonbane yet, often weapons will have different properties, like slashing or piercing, and you can choose, at least on our Foundry. I've never played this game around the table, so I don't know what that's like. Do you ever, when you're running Dragonbane, do you ask the players, are you slashing, are you piercing? Because that is a designated category that has effects, obviously.
I'll tell you what Dragonbane around the table is like. It's like forgetting half of the damn rules all the time.
I don't feel so bad, because that's how it was for me running it a year and a half or whatever it was.
A lot of times, though, after a few sessions, the players start paying more attention because it's to their benefit, especially with a game like Dragonbane, because it can be so deadly. They're looking for any possible edge to keep surviving. So they've been remembering that kind of stuff more.
Okay.
And I've been forgetting things to their benefit. Things like, oh, you have a helm on, you should have a bane to your awareness rolls, things like that. So
That's what's great about the Foundry system. It kind of reminds you
yeah,
most of the time, because Patrick, if you're watching out there, he called out for me that Peabody should not have been able to carry the Sword of Umdraman.
Rule of cool, baby. It's vulnerable to fire.
There
it
you
takes
go.
double damage from fire.
That's awesome. I've noticed a lot of creatures in Dragonbane that they have a vulnerability to fire that's very, I think there was some in Rittermound. There's all kinds of, more beastly, I guess. That is the category of beasts. We're in the category of beasts. I forgot to mention that in the bestiary. But a lot of times you guys, I remember, wouldn't figure that out. And so you're kind of like hacking away at these creatures with just normal weapons or a magical weapon. But man, if you just use the torch or something, that's one other tip. In Dragonbane, you can use a torch as a weapon. Don't forget that, because that can be incredibly valuable, especially knowing, now that you know, a lot of these monsters vulnerable to fire.
And just as an extra tip from me as a GM, because I encountered this a lot. So, I started with 3rd edition D&D, but I didn't get serious with running role-playing games until late 4th edition and then 5th edition, D&D next, when it was the test play. But a lot of my players were guys in their mid 40s or late 50s. And let me tell you, nobody knows better than what creatures are supposed to be weak to than the 2nd edition and further back players. So like the concept of, I was playing with one guy, I can't remember his name. This was years ago, like 2014, but he was like, I'm going to use my mace on the skeleton, and that should, they're vulnerable to bludgeoning damage. And I'm like, well, that does make sense. If you have players who can give you a good enough reason, I won't even use the word argument because it shouldn't be an argument, but if they give you good enough reason why they think something might be more effective, if it's not gonna break the game, let them have it, because it's a lot more fun that way, and it makes them strategize more, which can be fun.
Yeah, I guess as long as it's doesn't turn into metagaming, because that's sort of when you as a player have the knowledge of the entire monster manual because you've been playing it for 30 years, and then you take that knowledge into your character. I'm not a huge fan about that. And that's kind of why I really enjoy playing different games than D&D, because there's no sense of mystery or discovery anymore, because everyone's been so exposed to all of these creatures for decades that it's like, yeah, I know what all this stuff does. And it's hard to like separate yourself from that unless you're like deep in RP. But that's just how I like to play. I know a lot of people like to play RPGs more like video games in a way, moving avatars around a table. But anyway, let's talk about some monster attacks.
Yep. So as usual, you roll in the D6. The first attack it's a basic tentacle attack. It can basically reach a creature that's within 1 square of it, and they suffer a D10 bludgeoning damage and risk being exposed to the giant amoeba's corrosive poison. See above, which was the corrosive description. Basic attack, but it's D10 bludgeoning damage, which could nearly kill most players. The second one, Faces of the Dead. This one's probably my favorite.
Yeah, 100%.
This is so cool. Makes me think of the Blob, especially like that one image of the guy that you had posted. Iconic. So twisted faces appear on the surface of the shapeless body mass, floating by, dissolving or morphing into something else, and a mocking imitation of intelligent life. It's so good. All opponents within 10 meters must make a will roll to resist fear. And like we mentioned in a previous episode, fear can be very effective, especially in a tight dungeon.
Yep. Because you could have, I think Gideon hit fear and just beelined it in the opposite direction, and then ran into other creatures multiple times in the campaign. So
yeah, he did.
Yeah, quite effective. But what I love about this too is kind of like harkens back to the, created by demonic cultists as well, potentially as an accident. So you're wondering like, how does this amoeba, this single cell organism, like you were talking about, have the capacity to create these faces?
I wonder if the giant amoeba was their failed summonings of demons, so they don't form right, and it's just this
maybe
awful eldritch-like mass that is demonic in nature but not complete, so it's not a demon.
Yeah, or these are just remnants of the other people it's already absorbed.
Oh man, what if it's like demon afterbirth?
Gross.
It's demon placenta. It's so evil. It moves around and consumes things.
There you go, Free League. You can have that one. The giant amoeba is actually a demon placenta.
Yeah, so nasty. Sorry, everybody. Number 3 is theft. So it launches a long tentacle at an enemy within 6 meters, and it snatches a weapon from the victim's hand. The weapon is absorbed by the giant amoeba's body and can only be recovered by killing the beast.
That's really cool, because most of the time when you're disarming or are disarmed or are disarming, it just scatters the weapon somewhere across the room. You can go retrieve it, but this, you can't get it back until this thing's dead.
Slime ball. From the depths of its gelatinous being, it spits out a disgusting ball of slime within 10 meters. The victim suffers D8 bludgeoning damage and risks being exposed to the corrosive poison.
Yeah, it's like so a loogie at you.
Yeah, and paralyzing honestly is, in a way, now I'm thinking about it, more deadly than if it just did continuous damage, because if you don't recover from being poisoned, you don't get to, or from being paralyzed, you don't get to do anything. You're just vulnerable.
And it could just walk up to you and absorbing you. Yeah.
Poison cloud. It gathers its strength and emits a stinking cloud of poison that affects everyone within 10 meters. The victims become dazed and are exposed to a paralyzing poison with potency 12. Oh, so that's a little stronger than the 9 from just corrosive. And then the last one, absorption.
Yeah.
It sends out tentacles towards an opponent. It pretty much takes you, pulls you into itself, and then once you're inside of it, you immediately are exposed to the corrosive poison, and you suffer D6 damage. Armor has no effect because you're completely covered. It probably like seeps in underneath your armor. It takes additional D6 damage per turn, but can continue to attack the amoeba from within. The victim gets out when the amoeba is dead. So that would be the only time I would say, if you get pulled into that thing and your weapon's in there, then I would say you could get your weapon and start attacking it with it inside of it. But
I think it's not listed here, but I think I would potentially, I guess if I'm running it as written, I wouldn't, but I feel like it should be baned.
It should be,
If you're suspended in this gelatinous fluid, this slime, like there's no way you're going to be able to get like off a really great swing.
Yeah, you're nowhere near as proficient if you were in water, let alone something that was eating you alive. So
100%.
All right, so that's what it can do. Now, Jason, how does the chronicler here record what she's seen of amoebas?
Yeah, so I'll start with a random encounter. What they find going down the road is a hole in the ground filled with murky water with the rear end of a horse sticking out. It's not moving, and there are flies buzzing around its legs. But the horse and rider have been devoured by a giant amoeba that has strayed from its habitat and found a deep pit where it now feeds on unwary travelers and their mounts. I wasn't a huge fan of this until I started thinking of it in different contexts. Like, I would make this like off the beaten path. I don't know, because I just picture like if you're going down a wide open road, there's like a pit with a horse sticking out of it. I guess maybe it would draw you in potentially. Right. If you're curious, like, hey, what happened? I'm going to get in the quote unquote water, and then you're screwed. So maybe it could work that way. But I guess in my mind, I picture, I don't want to say necessarily swampland, but like there's a lot of foliage, there's a lot of overgrowth and stuff. And, maybe fit it in sort of with the kind of tone of the adventure, but yeah, that's the random encounter. Moving on to Adventure Seed. This one so far, my favorite Adventure Seed that I've read, and I have not read the whole Bestiary though, so I'm sure there's more to come. But at Castle Rosencrest, so we are given a named place. There is a princess and her husband. They tremble with fear because their servants are disappearing without a trace, one by one, all and at an accelerating pace. And soon no one wants to work at the quote-unquote haunted castle, and the Rosencrest fear that they themselves will vanish before long. So the player characters, you guys, are hired to search the building and find out what's causing these disappearances, and if possible, bring them to an end. And it gives you the mystery here, what exactly is going on as well. So you have not just like a hook, but you have an answer. And so what it is that 2 giant amoebas have entered the castle's dark cellar from which they hunt its residents at night. But it gets even cooler because the castle is haunted by the monster's victims, the ghosts of these servants. and the courtiers, who appear threatening but simply want to show the player characters the way to their murder's lair. So cool, because you have these giant amoebas in the cellar of this castle. You're going down there, but then there's ghosts everywhere. But they appear to not be able to communicate very well. And so normally in Dragonbane, you see ghosts and haunted in castles. You're going to try to attack them, but they're just trying to communicate to lead you to where their killer is. So really, really cool adventure seed.
And it's cool because they were killed by the giant amoeba, I would make the ghosts appear as like partially melted figures, which would explain why they're not good at talking. Because like the first time you run into a ghost, I'd be like, you hear like this sound, and I would describe like bubbling ooze coming out from like their melted jaw and through their throat, and just to try to freak them out a little bit.
Oh, and check this out. So if, let's say, the players get to the bottom and they find this amoeba, and we have the faces of the dead attack, imagine the players, if they haven't solved the mystery, they start seeing the faces of these ghosts that they saw previously on the surface of this thing, and then it clicks. So that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool. That's multiple ways you can have the mystery solved, one way or the other.
Yeah, and I was so close. So one thing, I'm probably going to make a separate video about this, but the Misty Vale map has so many cool illustrations that aren't adventure sites, and I did actually create some homebrew stuff in the campaign for that, but I was so close to making a giant amoeba encounter in one of the ruined castles, but the players just didn't have to, or the players didn't happen to go that way, so it never happened. But once I read this entry, I was really anxious to have these
give it a shot.
To try some giant amoebas. But I guess moving on, Joey, let's talk about at your table. It's a good segue. Talk about how you might run some giant amoebas, because you have.
I'll talk about how I did run it. I'll make that quick. Players were, and this was in Dragonbane, the players were moving through the city's sewers because there was like a big bandit raid going on above, and they were asked to go and find and retrieve some key figures. When they were in the sewers, they were getting chased by bandits. Then they had rats, swarms of rats coming towards them, and they're like, oh, do we have to fight these? Or like, is this a swarm of rats that's an enemy? But it turned out the rats were trying to get away from a giant amoeba. Once they realized what was happening, they backtracked to go towards where the bandits were, and they kind of all hid themselves, and they let the bandits get entangled with the giant amoeba, which was great. So I let that happen, and they kind of snuck their way. Like, they knew we don't want to mess with whatever that is. And I believe one of the players had a successful beast lore check. So I described all I described, I believe at the time, was the corrosiveness, and they were like, yeah, no, don't go near it. So they avoided it. Another way I would use them, though, I did this in D&D, and I would probably do the same thing here, is they're in a dungeon and they get to a fork in the road, basically. And one side looks super clean and like nice, doesn't smell terrible. The other way is like there's blood all over the floor, caked on the walls. It just smells foul. And when I did that in D&D, they were like, well, let's go see what's down the clean hall. Why was the hallway so clean? Because a slime had gone through and eaten all of the organic matter that was there. So they literally just walked into a gelatinous cube when I was running D&D. So if I did that in Dragonbane, they're gonna, maybe I would make it where like they find a well and they think it's normal water, but it's not.
Speaking of, I just got this idea too when you're talking about your sewer encounter. Imagine an adventure centered around people disappearing only when they go to the bathroom. So these giant amoebas are coming up what do they call them? Medieval toilets. When you sit on a hole. When I was in Ireland, I saw plenty of them.
Anyway, what they're called.
Anyway, whatever it's called, let us know in the comments. Imagine like giant amoebas going up in those things. So people will go to bathrooms and never come out again. Or parts of them might be left behind because maybe the giant amoeba wasn't able to pull them all the way down. That would be a cool adventure. And then that would send you into the sewer and you'd find out exactly what's going on.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Yeah.
And funny as hell too. That'd be a really fun one. Another fun one I think I would do is maybe it's like a demon who's disguised themselves as like a traveling magician is giving away these little glass bottles of slime to children in the village or in the city to play with, and it's little tiny amoebas that as they get bigger as they consume more, and people are trying to figure out they're trying to figure out what like Like it starts with mice, and then it's house cats, and then it's the children themselves. Like, what's going on? Why are things going missing?
Yeah, or what if it was all little pieces of the same giant amoeba?
Yeah, and
put in different flasks, and they're coming back to make some uber boss at the very end. That'd be cool.
That would be cool.
Cool. All right. Well, moving on. We don't have any artwork yet, so we recorded this episode, or we are recording this episode a little early. So if I do receive some, or any kind of, photos or whatever, any kind of content related to giant amoebas, I will cut it into the video. And wouldn't you know it, right when I'm editing this video, I get this image. This awesome illustration is from Ducky. I love this one. It's black and white. It's in ink. It's very old school looking. It's a fantastic rendition of a giant amoeba. It's got arrows sticking in it. It's got a sword, but also it has a skeleton. Or is it one of those faces of fear we talked about earlier? Either way, what I love most about that part is how it almost looks like it's opening up, having this humanoid figure there to beckon you inside, maybe even hypnotize you to drop your weapons and give up. Thanks again, man, for the submission. This is really great work. Patrick, who is the developer of all of the Foundry stuff regarding Dragonbane, so the system itself, all of the modules, he's on our Discord server. By the way, come hang out with us. The Discord server is free to join. It's in the link down below. But he explained, because Joe and I were having this, we had this discussion, I think even in the last episode, about why amoeba? Why not slime? Why not ooze? Why not any of this stuff? And so Patrick, he's from Sweden, and we all know that the original Dragonbane game came from there in the 80s. He gave us a little bit of a history lesson with the original giant amoeba, which was in the original, of course, Dragonbane game. So I'll just read the description briefly and I'll put the artwork up here. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. You guys can if you'd like to. I'm not going to make a fool of myself, but it's a large, disgusting lump of slime whose primary activity is to find organic material that can be eaten. So pretty much the same. The amoeba envelops edible objects with its body and consumes them by dissolving them with its bodily fluids. A giant amoeba is gray in color, so that's interesting. We didn't really get a descriptive color in this in the modern monster manual. And it's 2 to 3 meters across. So that gives us a strict size versus the quote unquote large. And I feel like 2 to 3 meters that's probably like normal size too large, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's actually really not that large.
And the giant amoeba also has no intelligence or will, and therefore cannot be affected by magic or other effects that rely on intelligence or will. That's another cool little thing there. So thanks, Patrick, for sending that along. Oh, he also noted that slime and ooze translated to Swedish doesn't sound very monsterish, more like something you would cough up. So I guess they called it amoeba instead and then translated it back in Dragonbane. So there you go. For those of you out there who are wondering why amoeba, there's the answer. So thanks, Patrick.
And just real quick, my brain is dumb. You said 2 to 3 meters and my brain went into yards. No, 3 meters is pretty big.
Close.
That's like
close.
9 feet.
Well, yeah, 9 feet, but 2 meters is like, like a little over 6 feet, I think.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking. Like, yeah, that's in the realm of possibility for a human, of course, to be that size. Anything else you wanted to talk about giant amoebas, or are we going to call it and talk about what we're going to discuss next week?
I have a request of any viewers. I really love gelatinous cube, giant amoeba, gray ooze. I like slime monsters, and I love like the old film and the remake film in the 80s of The Blob. They probably have remade it since then. But if you have any recommendations of other horror films that also have slimes in them, please tell me what they are in the comments, because
Creepshow 2.
Oh shit.
Did you forget about that? Creepshow 2. The raft monster, or the lake monster.
Yeah.
That's a good one. That's one of my favorites in that movie.
I haven't seen that in forever, so I know what I'm going to watch afterwards. But yeah, if you have any others, let me know, because I really like them, and I'd like to see them in other media. And I'm just terrible at finding and knowing stuff. I'm bad at it. That's all there is to it. So help me out.
I forgot to mention, if you guys would like to send any content to us to be featured on the viewer showcase, email us at archivistofadventure@gmail.com, or you can join our Discord server and message me or Joey, and we'll get your content up there. Remember, it can be drawings, stories, adventure seeds, miniature photos, anything related to the upcoming creature, which is going to be what, Joey?
Oh, you know what? I don't even know.
I didn't either. I was hoping you looked ahead.
It is the Ancient Dragon.
So we are back to the realm of dragons. So I'm curious to see what that is. I really love the artwork in that one too, but you guys won't get to see it till next week. So thanks for hanging out with me, Joey, talking about giant amoebas. It's always great.
Always fun.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with us, everybody, and we will see you in the next one.